Mike, great to meet you, and so happy you're able to spend some time with us today. The SPP members are keen to hear from procurement professionals about how they're addressing challenges related to sustainability and responsible sourcing. So it's sessions like this that really make the whole movement very worthwhile. So to kick off, can you provide an introduction about yourself and what you do?
Thanks for the invite, Seb. Happy to participate and glad I can participate in the peer sharing efforts of the SPP. It's been a really great opportunity to be part of this organization the past, I think, like 18 months at this point. So Mike Vigars, I am currently a procurement analytics manager for Restaurant Supply Chain Solutions based in Kentucky in the United States, where sustainability is one of the many hats I wear, and managing the supplier sustainability reporting and trying to boost that for our brands, for our procurement team, and for our franchise partners across the country. Prior to coming to RSCS, I worked for Henkel, where I was part of the global sustainability efforts in procurement, specifically focused on leading procurement sustainability efforts in North America, which was one of my first real exposures to the great work that's being done around the world in sustainable procurement. And before jumping into the corporate world specifically, I worked during business school helping a client through our business school's B Corp clinic work on attaining their certification to become a B Corp, which through my team's efforts, they were able to do the following year. So very exciting stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks for the background there, Mike. So what does sustainable procurement mean to you?
For me, sustainable procurement really means embedding sustainability in procurement practices. And that means taking a look at the full scope of what sustainability means. I think too often people hear sustainability and think it's really just the environmental dimension and don't consider the social and the governance dimensions as well, which are critical to really understanding the good that we are doing, the good that our suppliers are doing, and really assessing the impact that has on people's lives and on the planet. I think the other great thing about this, and a reason why sustainability really deserves a more key seat at the table when it comes to procurement practices, is that by getting the visibility that comes with looking at sustainability in procurement, we're better able to not only think strategically, but also, especially during what's been a really crazy past year for so much of the world, really understand risk and really understand ways that we can begin to manage and to mitigate that risk in our supply chains.
It's clear technology plays a pretty key role in advancing sustainability agendas. What technologies have you been using to monitor or support your ESG activities?
So in terms of technology that I've used previously, I've been part of building something from scratch for someone to measure their environmental, social, and governance impact without any mechanism at all. And so building that from scratch, as well as working with two organizations that have pretty good technology partners in place. So I know one that a lot of organizations use is EcoVadis. And from a technology perspective, a great thing about EcoVadis and similar platforms is that there's a standardized assessment in a lot of dimensions. It's not always the same assessment for every supplier, but because so many suppliers are completing an assessment with this type of organization, it really helps them to do the work on an annual basis, or however often we are asking our suppliers to update and perform the assessments. So that level of familiarity makes the process easier and hopefully gets us better data and more actionable data to really understand the sustainable impact of our suppliers. In my current role, we use a different tool. It's called TrueView, and it's a Deloitte platform. The major advantage for us here is that it's a very customizable tool. And so the survey items that we are asking our suppliers really look at the scope of what we want from the organizational perspective. And because of the fact that we use the platform not just for sustainability, but also for other aspects within our organization, it also means that the different partners and stakeholders internally are familiar with the workings of it as well. Another bonus, I think, one thing as we see technology begin to take a more prominent role in really accelerating sustainable procurement is really taking a look at a couple different ways of getting it done. One advantage we're seeing with the TrueView for our suppliers is that they can complete surveys online using the dashboard, and that's a really straightforward method. But oftentimes, as we know, as practitioners of sustainable procurement, so often the person who's getting asked to complete the survey isn't the person who's going to have all the answers. So another great feature that I've seen different technologies use is being able to download the report and maybe even circulate it amongst different colleagues, whether it's within your team locally or globally, to complete the information, get the data that we need, and to upload it to our system. Regardless of the technology that gets used, I think one key piece for, and I think this applies whether it's technology or other dimensions of sustainability, is to not make things overly complicated for the suppliers. We have a lot of suppliers who are large enterprises and probably have significantly sized sustainability teams internally. But we also have other suppliers, whether they're our tier ones or our tier twos, who don't have that sort of capability. And so having a platform that allows for some means of a standard approach or some knowledge of the sorts of things that will be assessed coming from the different supplier requests is important to remember. Just because you are asking your supplier to complete a sustainability survey, for example, for most suppliers, you're not the only one who's asking this question. Other customers are making the same request. And so making it possible for the suppliers to really give you the data you're looking for accurately, thoroughly, and in a timely fashion really helps us drive sustainability forward.
One of the biggest challenges I'm hearing from those managing supply chains is that you end up relying on a range of sources to measure carbon impact. How are you approaching this?
So when it comes to the carbon impact, that's something we're definitely looking at. In fact, our parent organization has really been working actually with some third-party vendors to look at ways that we can develop science-based targets and really understand our total impact. So I really can't speak to the type of technology that's being used, but it is something that we're looking at. I think that one of the things that's important for understanding the carbon impact and understanding how to improve that going forward, how to better manage it is first of all doing, I think, what we and a lot of other organizations are doing, which is understanding what the baseline is. And then figuring out once that baseline is built, what makes sense for how to really make an impact going forward. So lots of different moving pieces there that we are working on at the present time.
The landscape of relevant technologies is growing fast, and we're seeing existing companies respond with new solutions, and we're seeing some great innovations from startups. Are you currently evaluating any new technologies for your sustainability roadmap?
One thing that I would say is that I'm constantly assessing what's out there on the market and what partners are offering what elements to really help us drive it forward. So both myself and others on our team are kind of constantly assessing, not just for sustainability, but really understanding what technologies are out there to better help us do our jobs and serve our stakeholders and our customers. So that's definitely a key piece of what we're doing. In terms of things I'm especially looking forward to, one of the things that I'd like to see happen to really embed sustainability in people's procurement practices is finding ways to kind of incorporate it into the mindset of the procurement team and looking at ways that we can kind of harness, whether it's email messaging or some news feeds or that sort of thing that will allow us to really, even if it's just something small on a regular basis, it's not sending someone a governance report every week and asking them to read it, but it's giving them a useful, practical nugget. And it might not help every buyer every week, but giving them something that they can maybe latch onto, and whether it's helping them think differently or helping them take something to a supplier, whether it's to generate an idea or to challenge them to improve their practices or their reporting. I think those are the sorts of things that I'm certainly paying a close eye on at the moment.
Mike, you hit on an interesting point there about reporting on your suppliers at scale and also reporting in a consistent way. Are you able to share an example about how you've done this before?
It's something, Seb, that did not really use a lot of technology aside from some of the sustainability reporting that we had both as part of an organization my last company was part of, as well as our sustainability reporting platform. But to really embed that knowledge, I would send out a weekly update to our North America buying team. And, I went through a series of breaking down the report that they'd see from our partner for their suppliers. And so that in the absence of doing a 1 hour webinar where people are doing 1,001 other things and not really fully engaged, I broke that report down into pieces and really shared like one piece at a time. And again, if you don't care about it, you can delete the email. But if you say, I don't really know enough about this, I'll come back to it later, having that in your file and being able to come back to it when you need to was important. I also incorporated reports both from our own organization's sustainability efforts and some of our suppliers' sustainability efforts from the different news feeds that I had going on. And so sometimes it was good to highlight so that when our buying team was speaking with their suppliers or engaging with our stakeholders across the business, that they could highlight something that we were actively doing, or maybe highlight something that one of our suppliers is doing, to whether it's reminding stakeholders about our suppliers' commitments or challenging a supplier with what other competitors are doing in the marketplace. Those are the sorts of things that I just try to provide, those little tidbits of information that would serve two purposes. One is to really work on embedding sustainability into the mindset, but also give the team something practical to act on. I think that's a very critical piece of the equation.
Great, thanks for the additional context and feedback there. So thinking ahead, what are your short-term and mid-term plans related to sustainable procurement in your organization?
So I think that the big one, and certainly fits the short and medium term goals, is taking a look at transparency and really driving transparency within our tier 1 suppliers as well as our tier 2 suppliers. And that's to, number one, really assess and understand where we are. And it's also to assess opportunity going forward, because really only by fully understanding what the tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers are doing now can we partner with them effectively to really look for what the opportunities are going forward. And I look at that again from two dimensions, at least. One is the sustainability piece. How can we continue to drive sustainability? And that transparency that we get through looking at the operations of a supplier from the sustainability perspective also gives us insight to risk assessment and to help us work on risk mitigation planning, which again, I think is also part of the work that sustainability does and the value that sustainability brings to an organization.
Great insights and ideas there, Mike. Appreciate that. Is there anything else that you want to share with the SPP community?
Seb, I think thinking about beyond the short and medium term, right? I think for me, the big challenge and the big goal for us in the SPP and those who are passionate about sustainable procurement generally really needs to be thinking about how do we embed sustainability into the procurement function, and how do we just make it part of what we do. And so it's not some sort of separate reporting or separate initiatives, but it's just part of what procurement does. Is it really seeks to understand, whether it's understanding the governance efforts of our suppliers, whether it's understanding the ways in which we can improve packaging without decreasing quality, whether it's understanding how we can optimize logistics it's not necessarily about just getting the lowest cost, but really providing the lowest impact on getting goods from one place to another. I think those are all pieces that we pay attention to now on some level, right? But I think for me, when we have that sort of approach to procurement kind of embedded in what we all do every day, I think that will be a major win for this team's efforts and for procurement as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike. Really enjoyed speaking with you today, and I look forward to seeing you at the next ambassadors meeting in May. Thanks.
Thanks, Seb, for the time again and for the invite. It was great speaking with you about this, and can't wait for the next meeting.